Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. Got you covered. Traditional league, dynasty league, PPR league, IDP league, even daily fantasy football league. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
All right, GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. It is your host, Ethan, on this fantastic Tuesday evening. We're recording this on Monday. The Monday night game for Chicago versus the Rams have not played yet, so I don't know the outcome, but we are just gonna go ahead and kick off and talk about what went down on Sunday. And just all the crazy, wacky stuff. There's some games to remember for some people. And it was, if you went up against them, I'm sorry. If you did not and you ended up having them, congratulations. But there were some fantasy performances to remember for sure. And we're going to go over all of that and then some, and then talk about just some current standings in the league. What are we going to do with Dallas as everything seems to be in a bad spot? And maybe it was time to trade a week ago. Maybe it's too late now, but it's just things are affecting so many different parts of that offense that you don't even want to just talk about it anymore. The Baker experience is happening. Odell, unfortunately, out for the season with an ACL injury, and that stinks. But, fantasy wise, you should have traded him 2 weeks ago, right? And that's just the biggest thing. I said it a few weeks ago. This is the time to trade away Odell because he just would not have the same outcome. And unfortunately, anybody who did trade for him are down bad. But, in all likelihood, they were probably down bad beforehand because he wasn't doing anything on their offense. And hopefully Odell recovers well and all that jazz. But without further ado, let's get into it. We're going to go ahead and talk about my fantasy week because my week is technically already over. Score-wise, my opponent only dropped 67 points on me, and I had 105, and I'm still going strong. I have Daryl Henderson Jr. left to play this evening. I have Daniel Jones. I started Daniel Jones in. I could have chosen between Baker Mayfield, Kyle Allen, and Daniel Jones, and I switched between Baker Mayfield and Daniel Jones, or I switched between Kyle Allen and Baker Mayfield probably simultaneously. And then on Thursday night, when I was thinking about it, I made a decision right before the game started, and I picked up Daniel Jones, started him, and it was all fine and good. He got me 20 points. I thought I was a genius. I still do, personally, because I just don't think Baker Mayfield's having 5 touchdowns a game for the rest of the season. I don't think he'll do this again, and it is what it is, right? He played against the Bengals. I don't believe Baker Mayfield is going to repeat this sort of thing against a Las Vegas team that really is feisty and can do some things. So, I'm not too concerned about that. Alvin Kamara is excellent. And it's so fun to have a guy like that on your team. He's the one out of the top 6 that has actually lived up to top 6 potential. And, a lot of those guys who are in the top 6, some of that is not their fault because of injuries and such and all that. But Alvin Kamara has been nothing short of spectacular. 14 rushing touches, 83 yards, and he had 8 receptions for 65 yards. So PPR wise, still a monster and an excellent guy, even though he has not, he hasn't scored in the last 2 games, but that seems to be okay. Been fine. Fantasy-wise, it doesn't really matter as long as the volume stays exactly the same, and I don't see that changing anytime soon, even if Michael Thomas does come back. I don't see that changing. Ronald Jones, listen, the Ronald Jones experience that I brought myself into is just one that is not fun. Ronald Jones was cooking for the first quarter of that game, and he dropped the pass, and then he never saw the game again until it was too late. He didn't come back in the game till later on. He did score a touchdown, right? He had 34 rushing yards, and he had 11 carries. So rushing the ball, it wasn't that great. And he had one pass for 2 yards. So all in all, I'm glad he got the rushing touchdown, or else it would have been just a horrendous day for Ronald Jones. Keenan Allen, who has yet to really see the end zone too much this year, I said Keenan Allen. Kenny Gallaudet, there we go. Kenny Gallaudet has yet to see the end zone too much this year. Only 2 touchdowns on the year, but his catch, his receptions have been pretty similar for all 6 or 4 throughout the year. 2 back-to-back 100-yard receiving games. He seems to be catching his stride a bit. Just hopefully he can get an end zone. But 17 points, 1 point PPR is great no matter what. I made a mistake. Started Traquan Smith, thought he would be better. Turns out Marquez Callaway is the next coming of Marquise Colston in the Saints offense. And I just dropped the ball on that one, clearly. I just didn't do enough research. Started Darren Fells. I had to drop Austin Hooper because he was injured. Darren Fells had a donut. Not good. Chiefs defense, who I've been holding on to. I have not switched lanes yet. I have not done it. And I'm glad I didn't because they put up 21. So this is, I think this is the second time this year that they've put up some big numbers. Yeah, they had 18 against New England, and against Denver they put up 21. Every other week has been either 5 or a negative number. They did have 8 against Baltimore, so that may count for something. But they're an interesting defense for sure. When things are going well and they can just control clock, their defense can just do what it wants. But other times when they have to, when they're up against offense that's pretty high caliber, they do drop the ball quite a bit. So it's it's been hot or cold. Thankfully, I haven't had to depend on my defense too much to win games in fantasy this year. But yeah, man, it's not looking too good. Greg Zuerlein honestly might be droppable at this point because the Dallas offense is just. We'll talk about it. Yeah, man. So I left AJ Green on my bench. That was my mistake. Shouldn't have done that. And I had Hasty on my bench who had 8 points. So in reality, I could have started Hasty or Hasty, however you pronounce it, and I would have been living good. He still had only 9 rushing yards or 9 rushing attempts, and he had 1 catch today against New England, and that was it. So yeah, I'm doing fine. So I'm 5-2 after this Monday night game, and we'll see what happens here. In my Yahoo League, we're holding on, man. We're trying very hard. We are up by 30, by 0.20. So we're up by 0.2. It's not looking too great. I do have David Montgomery left to play. Fortunately, I double dipped and I had Darren Fells, who gave me a fat 0. Had Michael Gallup in because I had Justin Jefferson on bye, gave me nothing. Josh Jacobs had 3.1. This is non-PPR, mind you. So 3.1 points from Josh Jacobs going against Tampa Bay. And I think the moral of the story is don't start your running backs against Tampa Bay unless they are just otherworldly offensive players like Christian McCaffrey or Alvin Kamara or such. Everybody else just don't do it. It's not worth it. You think that Josh Jacobs, just because he was presumably a top 10 draft choice, you should just go ahead and start him in the start your stud stuff, even if it's against a really tough run defense. But Tampa Bay's defense is disgustingly nasty. Horrible. And as I speak, the kickoff has just started here for LA Rams versus Chicago. And, he has Cooper Kupp left to play. I got a 4.8 from Stephon Diggs, which is, I think, his lowest number this year. Not fun, not great. And, yeah, man, it's just going to be a lot tougher across the board here for all different types of stuff from now on in this league. I don't know. I don't do well in non-PPR leagues, man. And I don't know if it's just because I have too much faith in guys that get volume and the volume doesn't translate because you don't get the extra reception or whatever. I do still have Amari Cooper, and that's not fun. But here we go, man. This is about to get real nitty gritty around here. Russell Wilson, lifesaver. If I didn't have him, everything would be out of place. He had Cam Newton, who had 2.82. In some leagues he had negative. So depending on how your scoring settings are, you might be in a bad time. And thankfully, Tyreek Hill didn't have to do anything last week, and I went up against Boston Scott, who had a pretty decent day. Buffalo defense at 14, thanks out to them. And someone who I doubted, Mr. Fairburn. He did his thing. But everybody else, man, I could have put in Leonard Fournette, but I'm not putting Leonard Fournette over Josh Jacobs. I'd rather roll out with Josh Jacobs, even against Tampa. I don't care. But yeah, that's just exactly where my team is at. I'm holding on by threads, and hopefully things just work out for me better than what you would imagine. So that is my fantasy football team updates. And yeah, man, across the league, let's talk about my ESPN league because things are getting spicy all across the board. Antonio Brown's been picked up. Everybody is just kind of reeling. And I can't really afford to lose right now. The two guys I'm tied for first in the division have already secured their wins as long as my own. Somebody dropped 172. So he had Deshaun Watson and he had Devonta Adams, who had 44.6 points. He also had DJ Moore, who had a big game, even though he only had 4 receptions. Thanks a lot, Saints defense on that one. But yeah. And then the other guy who dropped 187 because he had a 53-point performance from Tyler Lockett, who essentially has made up everything else from the last couple of weeks, because he hasn't been doing the best fantasy-wise for a lot of people. But Tyler Lockett made it all back in one game. He had A.J. Brown with 27, 37 from Kyler Murray, 27 from Tyler Boyd. And it's crazy, too, because technically he started the wrong quarterback. Justin Herbert had 38.48 points on his bench. And let's keep in mind, this guy that he's going up against, he's still projected to get 155 because he has David Montgomery, he has Allen Robinson, he has Robert Woods, and he has the LA Rams defense left to play. So he's still, he might have a chance at this thing. Not really. It's just, you can't expect this again. The guy just started all the right things except for, he had Brian Hill, but he had Boston Scott, he had A.J. Brown, he had Tyler Lockett, he started Greg Olsen, not the best, and Green Bay's defense, defense is whatever. It's a cost. It's a coin flip in all those accounts. But now, man, this guy's team is just getting stronger and stronger. He does have Joe Mixon, who was out, and he has Miles Sanders, who was also out. So this guy's team is rolling right now. He's definitely, my division is getting tougher by the day, and just hopefully they get knocked out before I have to see him, because right now, playoff bracket wise, it's not looking too hot. I would have to, I would technically still be the 3rd seed, which is weird because I definitely beat the guy who I'm raving about for his team. I got to check how the seeding works and all that, but I'd be 3rd team, and I'll be going up against a lot of dudes. And it's an 8-team playoff, so a lot of things are moving and shaking in fantasy. It's week 8. We only have 5 more weeks. Things are getting a little bit testy out here, man. You can't, you can only do so much. Things are getting great. So, in standing news, I am technically ranked 2nd. I thought I was 3rd, but I'm 2nd place in the standings. I guess it's because playoffs are created between both divisions. So, I'm 3rd in overall, but division-wise, I am 2nd, and that probably means nothing will change in the top 3. And everybody else is like, the first 3 in my division are 4-2, presumably 5-2 unless something crazy happens to the guy sitting at top. And then everybody else is 3-3 right now. And I'm not gonna lie, I haven't sat back and made the pre-existing calculation of where everybody's gonna land in the standings. But this league has just become extremely top heavy, and the middle is going to be a bloodbath. So everybody's got to keep their wits about themselves and all that. But all in all, man, fantasy has been fun this year, even through COVID. COVID-19 was a lot of scares, and the Titans debacle that sidelined them for a couple weeks and all this stuff, and the Steelers, and then everybody was just kind of worried, like, man, where is this going? Fantasy's kind of getting out of control. People aren't playing and all that. But all in all, man, it's just been happening. Like last week, we thought the Buccaneers and the Las Vegas Raiders were not going to play, and then they ended up playing. Maybe the Raiders should have not played the way that things happened. But yeah, man, fantasy football just continues to go on, and that's what we're going to do here. We're going to take another break, and we're going to continue to go on the fantasy football fast track on this Tuesday. GSMC, we'll be right back.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, GSMC fantasy football fans, we are here and ready to go. We're going to be talking about some of the highs and lows of this fantasy football season for week 7, should I say. And Joe Burrow and T. Higgins are getting together. It's about time. So this is from ESPN, their fantasy football article. Nice little read here. So the first rookie quarterback in NFL history to pass for at least 400 yards and 3 touchdowns while rushing for an additional score, which is, the ESPN stat of the decade, maybe. I don't know. But Burrow also became the 14th different rookie quarterback since at least 1950 to score 30-plus fantasy points in a game, and his 33.6 points were 11th best by any rookie quarterback during the same time frame. He rebounded in a major way from a pair of challenging matchups, reestablishing himself as a matchups consensus and yet borderline top 10 fantasy quarterback. Burrow's Cincinnati Bengals continue to struggle to keep opponents' offenses in check, which only supports his case, as he'll keep having to contending for the league's lead in passing attempts, and that he's faring as well as he has despite a shaky offensive line, and only further signals his massive talent. And he'll get a Tennessee Titans defense next week, a matchup that could probably put him in the top 10 of the positional rankings within a top 10 tier of fantasy quarterbacks, in which 2 are on bye, Kyler Murray and Deshaun Watson. And in week 8, Big Ben also faces a brutal matchup against Baltimore. So Higgins, by the way, he had 5 or more targets in every game this season in a volume pass offense. Higgins is a wide receiver 3/flex value in deeper leagues, and with more upside in non-PPR formats, the Bengals rookie wide receiver caught 5 of 5 for 71 and a touchdown versus the Browns, and he can run in breakers and adjust the ball on back shoulder throws, and that meshes with the accuracy and processing ability of Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. Justin Herbert is looking like the guy. So with 38.5 fantasy points, like we said earlier, he enjoyed the 4th best single game performance by a rookie quarterback since at least 1950, and now has 125.8 points through his first 5 NFL games, which is the second most during that time frame, only behind Cam Newton's, which was 128.4. And yes, Burrow's matchup was extremely favorable on Sunday, but the mark of a good quarterback is stepping up when facing his softest matchups. And it's also worth pointing out that the rookie had a total of 37.7 points while facing tough defenses in the Panthers in Week 3 and the Buccaneers in Week 4. And his mobility was on full display in this game, including his running for the game-winning score at the end of the third quarter. And he now has 10 passing touchdowns in his past 3 games combined. And it might be difficult to think to think Herbert as a high-end quarterback too in 2 quarterback leagues or a matchups candidate in single quarterback formats. That's where we're at currently. So the most fantasy points by a rookie quarterback in a game has been Josh Allen in Week 2018, Week 17 with 40.5. Russell Wilson in 2012 with 39.4. Cam Newton in 2011 with 39.3. Justin Herbert now in Week 7 with 38.5. And Marcus Mariota in 2015, 35.9. Let's go ahead and get into Devonta Adams. So he is just volume guy right now. So who needs another wide receiver when you have Devonta Adams? His 44.6 PPR fantasy points set a new personal best, breaking his previous mark of 41.6 set in Week 1. And those are his first 2 games of 40-plus points in his 90-game NFL career. And even though when defenses know it's coming, they seem to can't contain Devonta Adams, who has such an outrageous amount of targets that he has 2 of the top 7 single-game target shares despite being active for only 4 games thus far in the season. He had 47.1 this week, which was 5th largest, and 41.5% in Week 1, which was 7th largest. And, health willing, he's in good shape to be a top-scoring wide receiver the remainder of the year, accounting for his volume, as well as, favorable remaining schedule, with only his Weeks 12 against Chicago, Week 15 against Carolina, and Week 17 against Chicago again, matchups looking to be that challenging. Rob Gronkowski is looking insane. So everybody was down on Gronk, including this writer. Gronk through the first couple of weeks of the season, low target volume, plus a lack of overall usage and game plan. However, Gronk has now caught up to 10 of 16 targets for a total of 140 with 2 touchdowns in the past 2 games. And with Tampa Bay Buccaneers are scheming up on the route tree, we can look at a deep crossers there or a red zone targets here. And with Gronk flexed outside to create some isolation matchups, and Tom Brady has been dialed in, winning with ball location and on those throws. With a Week 8 game versus the Giants, Gronk will be ranked as a mid-tier tight end 1 for sure. And you weren't alone on your Gronk opinion, as everybody was right there with him. Gronk has been in a weird place, and we got to say it here. A team with Gronkowski, Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin, adding Antonio Brown, even someone like Scotty Miller, we're not so sure that things will adhere closely to the matchups either. So the best advice would be to embrace the inconsistency, knowing that the big games will come from time to time. But if that's not something that you want to absorb on your roster, try and get off them now, for sure. Especially in a time where people are ready to start trading away, Chris Godwin or Mike Evans as soon as the Antonio Brown news came. But especially for Chris Godwin, who had a pretty decent game, it might be time to move off now. So let's get into the Cowboys real quick. Let's talk about them too. So Cowboys all across the board have some pretty bad weeks back to back, and it's nothing changed this week. They lost pretty bad to the Washington football team 3-25, and it's 2 back-to-back games that were pretty ugly for the Cowboys after losing Dak Prescott to the season-ending injury in Week 5. And with Andy Dalton departing Sunday's game with a concussion, there's legitimate question on how adversely all these injuries, not to mention the team's defensive struggles, will affect the offense going forward. So consider that in 2 games, Ezekiel Elliott scored 12 and 6 PPR fantasy points, well beneath his 22 average in the first 5 weeks. CeeDee Lamb scored 13.4 and 0.1 on 16 total targets. Michael Gallup scored 4.3 and 0 on 8 total targets, and Dalton Schultz scored 7.5 and 4.2 on 9 total targets after rookie Ben DiNucci, I think that's how you pronounce it. DiNucci. He took over under center midway through the third quarter. The Cowboys totaled only 20 yards on 11 offensive plays, with all 3 of their possessions ending in punts. One might even think things can't get much worse for the Cowboys and that things should be evening out against weaker defenses, but the fact remains that they don't have to face many more easy matchups other than perhaps the Week 11 game against the Vikings, and you probably should worry about anything above the names of the time being. And though their rebound prospects might at least improve, should Coach Mike McCarthy take over play calling, or perhaps the team requires a more proven quarterback? So that's just kind of where it is. And they also have a don't count out Baker Mayfield section here. So we'll just go ahead and get this one out. So he had a really big turnaround after going 0-5 and passing an interception. Mayfield came back and completed 22 of his final 23 pass attempts for 297 yards and 5 total touchdowns, including making a near inexplicable game-winning touchdown pass to Donovan Peoples-Jones in the game's final minute. Mayfield set a new personal best in the process of scoring 29.8 fantasy points, and while it may have just been a fleeting good fortune, it has to be pointed out that he did do it while number 1 wide receiver Odell Beckham was sidelined due to a knee injury, which is now known as a torn ACL, out for the season, and which means for Mayfield, Beckham and the Cleveland Browns offense going forward is anyone's guess, and it's highly unlikely that Beckham is going anywhere in Mayfield's top target, and may be a turning point, but it's a good thing to see from a young quarterback with extremely fantasy-friendly matchups coming up against the Texans, the Jaguars, and the Titans. And just a quick few names. Josh Allen, for the 3rd straight game, we saw opposing defense use late movement in disguise versus the Bills quarterback, which creates some disruption for Allen in terms of timing and rhythm as a thrower. And yes, Allen, he posted over 300 yards passing with another 61 yards rushing, and you get that with Allen, the thrower volume, and plus the designed run concepts and scrambles. However, with no scoring production on Sunday in the Week 8 matchup versus the Patriots defense, Allen is going to need to slide back in a bit in some people's rankings. Previously locked in as a top 5 weekly play, Allen has dropped down into quarterback 8 to 10 range against New England, and the Patriots have not been a shutdown defense this season, but that's an exotic coverage team which will be using multiple sub-package looks with late movement in disguise to force Allen to play more off schedule. Deontay Johnson had a really big game, and it's all about availability. If he can stay healthy, he did get hurt, but came back in the game. He caught 9 of 15 targets for 80 yards and 2 touchdowns. And when he's up and healthy, he is a prime fit for Steelers' short to intermediate passing game with Ben Roethlisberger, which fits his style and traits as a catch and run target. And if he can go for next week, he is going to be the wide receiver 3 in a 14-team league. And even in a tough matchup versus the Baltimore Ravens defense, you're going to have to trust the volume. Terry McLaurin for the Washington football team. And while it did come against a dream matchup against the Cowboys, 22 fantasy points, PPR performance underscored his legitimate claim as wide receiver 1 valuation. His 11 targets out of the 21 for Washington as a whole boosted his seasonal target share up to 29.7%, 3rd largest in the league. And he was favorable schedule once he returns from Week 8 bye. In fact, you may want to utilize his week off. Fantasy managers sometimes get angsty, and while players are off the sidelines, to continue to pursue a trade for him. Kenny Gallaudet. So Kenny Gallaudet has missed some time with an injury in the first 2 games, but the veteran wide receiver caught 6 of 7 targets for 114 in a win against Atlanta after posting 105 receiving yards in week 6, like we talked about, and his catch radius is ridiculous. So you really can just throw it whatever. He has really great body control, and Matthew Stafford is going to give him targets on 50-50 balls all the time. Gallaudet will be a low-tier wide receiver 1 in some rankings versus the zone-heavy Colts defense. And the Cowboys defense, after another poor performance versus Washington, the defense has now produced a total of -9 fantasy points this season, and that's last in the league and worst total for defense special teams through 7 games since 1940. On top of that, the Cowboys are only fifth defense special teams in that span to have negative scores through 7 games. And, you can say there's a lot of issues here, from lack of communication or discipline to blown coverages in the secondary, but bad football at all 3 levels are right present in Dallas thus far. So there you have it, man. Fantasy football in a nutshell for week 7. What they didn't talk about, of course, was the ball out performance of a century from Tyler Lockett, who was literally a man on fire, and it was insane. DK has been a guy who a lot of players and a lot of fantasy players would say, who have been really high on myself. I've been patting myself on the back quite well due to the DK experience. And I don't know if he'll ever get to that point because he just doesn't attract that much volume. And it's like they guard DK in a sense of like he is a top 5 guy. He only had 2 receptions. He did have a touchdown called back in the game, so that does hurt his numbers. But Tyler Lockett definitely showcased why he is a guy that Russell Wilson still loves to throw to, and it was in full display. It was insane. That game was insane, actually. Going to overtime, the missed field goal, and then them making the field goal again to win the game, as in the Cardinals. 2 teams that both defenses are very shaky in the past game, even though Patrick Peterson came up clutch. And many a times, Russell Wilson looked like he forced it a bit. The first time I saw Russell Wilson really trying to force some plays that did not go his way. And that's kind of just the way he plays, right? He kind of has to do that, especially this whole let Russ cook era, which people have been thankfully retiring. They're just saying, Russell Wilson is throwing the ball. But yeah, man, we're going to take another break, and we're going to get into some topics of conversation that led around week 7 and possibly going into week 8. GSMC will be right back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast Nation, I am back here, and I'm going to talk real open and honest, guys. I don't know what to do with some of these trades because I know I need a trade to happen. I know there's a trade to make for me in multiple leagues. I'm looking at my team. I told you guys my team. I'm still waiting on the Michael Thomas thing to come around, and I'm not sure if it will. There's just too much going on to really depend on anything from people who have not played. And, I've been going on just fine without Michael Thomas, but with hoping that he comes back week to week, because even though Kenny Gallaudet technically has been my number one, wide receiver, it's just things are kind of difficult right now, and I would love for Michael Thomas to be able to play. But right now, the quarterback streaming thing is getting a little bit out of hand, because if I were to stream quarterbacks for the remainder of the season, I'm literally stuck with guys like Andy Dalton, Kyle Allen, Sam Darnold, Nick Foles. That's it. Those are my guys who I have to stream unless somebody gets hurt. And then, of course, I have a few guys on my bench. Well, I have Baker Mayfield on my bench currently, and I'm dealing with Daniel Jones in my starting lineup currently. So those are the guys I'm streaming against. Now, the thing about it is a lot of them are NFC East teams, which means that there's potential times that they're going to have to play Dallas. So that just means at least 16 points to me. Like, if you have to play Dallas, they're so bad that they're going to get me 16. But a lot of times, 16 points are not going to win me the league if some of these guys aren't showing up. So it's going to be very difficult for me to, I just don't believe that I'm in a good place. And a lot of teams across the league have quarterbacks. And they know I'm a team that has volume talent. Like, I have a good amount of talent, a lot of capital that I can trade away. And they're going to try and rob me. They're going to try and fleece me bad. And that's not what I want to get out of my life. Like, I don't want to be fleeced just to get a quarterback. And I know. People are not looking forward to giving away a talent like a Justin Herbert. So if I were to trade for Justin Herbert, what's the baseline? What do I need to do? Of course, like we talked about weeks ago, and like knowing how to prepare for a trade and how to offer a trade to someone, you got to look at what their team needs. And unfortunately, this guy's team is pretty solid, and he would be looking to upgrade some position in order to trade for that player back and then upgrade it later on. He got an excellent game out of Boston Scott. Miles Sanders will be back at some point. Joe Mixon will be back at some point. He has Mark Andrews on bye. He doesn't necessarily need a lot. He had Tyler Lockett, who dropped 53 points. A.J. Brown essentially is a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy. And he has a lot of good bench depth. He has Tim Patrick. He has Corey Davis, who I had at one point, and I had to drop him. And maybe I made the wrong decision there. But this guy's team is dynamite. Unless something crazy happens, this guy's team is ready to take it all the way. And I need a quarterback badly. So I can't look to him, even though he has Justin Herbert, who just put up 38. So he's really solid, and he's just set up to win, unfortunately. Then the guy playing him has a combination of Carson Wentz and Joe Burrow. So this is where things start to get a little bit spicy. So this guy, who is starting Antonio Gibson, Allen Robinson II, he has Deontay Johnson, and he has Mr. Montgomery, David Montgomery, as well, playing right now. Is Hunter Renfrow. His bench is pretty bad. He has Cole Beasley, who dropped 22, which Cole Beasley has been playing very well for the Buffalo Bills. He's kind of like their Julian Edelman type. It's kind of in between the numbers, gets a lot of dirty work, gets a lot of volume. He had 11 receptions. He really gets a lot of volume. But, he has Jared McKissick. His bench depth is not great. And for all accounts, Robert Woods sometimes can be a little shaky. But, that offense, the offensive potential of the Rams is still pretty strong. But he may want to bolster some things. But I feel like the only thing that I could really give him is a top-tier wide receiver of the likes of Michael Thomas, and I don't know if that's what he wants. And I don't want to give him Michael Thomas because that would just be irresponsible. So, unfortunately, I'm looking at a situation where Kenny Gallaudet might have to be moved, or Darrell Henderson Jr. may have to be moved. But that's only if Darrell Henderson Jr. can retain the value that he basically has right now. And, Darrell Henderson Jr. is in a weird spot for me because I'm still waiting on the Cam Akers experience to kind of take off because I have both. And if I didn't have both, I'd have one more roster spot and really two more because I don't want Darrell Henderson if Cam Akers is not on my team, because eventually the switch will come. I don't know when it's going to happen. In fact, it may happen after fantasy playoffs. Who knows? But, week 13 is coming very soon, and a lot of things can change between then. And, Alvin Kamara will leave my team via my cold, dead hands. Someone's going to have to unlock my phone and take him from me when I am no longer here on this planet. And that's just the end all be all of that whole thing. There's a lot of teams that have multiple quarterbacks in this league, and trying to trade for one in a situation where they're just going to try and fleece me just gives me the creeps, right? I don't want to trade those type of guys, right? And honestly, I'd rather stream if I'm going to be trading for someone like Gardner Minshew. If I'm going to trade, I'm going to go get a quarterback that matters, right? I'm not going to trade for Teddy Bridgewater because I could have had him. There was a week where I figured out I should probably trade Dak Prescott away. His value is probably going to tank at some point. I should trade him away, go pick up Teddy Bridgewater. I couldn't get Teddy Bridgewater because I didn't lose, and thus the waiver priority thing beat me out. Couldn't get him, and there was no real good trades out there for Dak Prescott that I would have taken. Anyway, hindsight 2020, it is what it is. But everybody has backup quarterbacks that they're okay with, except for me. And I guess I'm coming down to the ideology is maybe I'm just stuck with Baker Mayfield. Wouldn't that be ironic? I'm not a big Baker Mayfield fan. I've been quoted, I've been stated of being such. I'm very harsh on Baker Mayfield as a player. I like his commercials. They're hilarious. And I hope he stays in the league and I hope he can be competent so I can see him in the commercials more often. But the fact of the matter is he's been very inconsistent, and he's been inconsistent in a way that hurts me football-wise as well. So let's just go through. Baker Mayfield, 9 points, basically, or 10 points we can give him. It was 9.8. Let's give him 10. Week 1 against Baltimore Ravens. It was Baltimore Ravens, whatever. First game against Cincinnati, 15 points. Against Washington, 14 points. Good defense in Washington. Against Dallas, which should be an instant boom, right? You would assume. 15 points, so that hurts. But then he had 15 points against Indianapolis, who they did beat. That's a pretty big game. Got droughted in Pittsburgh, 5 points, which is why he didn't start for me this week. And he got 29 against Cincinnati. So I don't really know where this lands. But on average, he should have 15-something points, I feel like. That's just kind of where I feel like his baseline of a solid Baker performance is. But maybe he turns the corner. Because if I go through Daniel Jones, right? Let's look at Daniel Jones here. 17, week 1, scored 2 touchdowns against Pittsburgh. Chicago had 7 points. Against San Fran, he had 8 points. Against the Rams, he had 10 points. Against Dallas, he had 8, which is not great at all. Anytime you see Dallas on the schedule, you should be licking your chops. When you don't get over 20 against Dallas, it's a problem. Against Washington, he had 13, and against Philadelphia, he had 20. He's going up against Tampa Bay next week. Just based off of principle, I legit cannot start Daniel Jones. But then he goes up against Washington, another tough defense, but it's in division, and division games can be a little bit wonky. He has Philly. Then he has Cincinnati. He has Seattle, which is a horrible defense. He has Arizona, whose defense isn't that great. Then Cleveland again, whose defense is not that great. I'm sorry, he has Cleveland. He hasn't played them yet, whose defense is not that great. Then he goes against Baltimore, and then he has Dallas. After the bye, his stretch of bad defenses, if they can just figure something out, Daniel Jones might be able to put something together. So, all in all, I'm sitting here looking at what my options are. My team is as well constructed as probably is going to be without me having to trade a big piece away to get 2 smaller pieces that probably won't pan out well. So unless I'm just sitting on, Michael Thomas, which is dead weight, because he may not, I don't know what's going to happen with him. But I'm going to continue to sit and play the long game because I can afford to, because I've won thus far. I don't have to make any hasty decisions. Haha, because I have Hasty on my team. You see how I did that there? Hilarious. But I don't have to make any strong decision making there because, I have AJ Green, who's back-to-back weeks of at least 15 points, 7 receptions this week, 8 receptions last week. That's really good. I mean, if you compare it to where he was, he had 14 receptions total in 5 weeks. Horrible numbers. 8 and 7, and these are real receptions. Like the only thing that he hasn't done is scored yet. And Tennessee's defense is kind of shaky. It's kind of wishy-washy. I think Joe Burrow can do some things against him. AJ Green will be making his starting lineup appearance next week. Got to do some things at tight end. Don't know where I'm going to get it from. But, we're going to make some things happen. You got to make some things shake. And that's probably going to be my Achilles heel for the rest of the year, as I don't have a tight end to depend on. But the one thing I will say is quarterback, I just can't see myself trading. I cannot see myself trading for a quarterback and basically harpooning my team to dust. Not this time. Not again. I can't do it. Because, I haven't done it yet, but I can't just see myself out there. I built this team from the ground up. I held strong. I know my reasonings for things. There's just no reasoning for me to trade for a quarterback just yet. And it's going to hurt me because I really don't like the quarterbacks that I have. But there's projections, there's statistics to say they should do better based off of matchups. But the problem is, it's Baker Mayfield and Daniel Jones. And they're just going to anger me to a different level. And that's just how those sort of things are going to work out. They're just going to anger me to a different level. And I have similar problems here with the Dallas Cowboys, which I guess I'll start it now. But I'm in a bad spot here because I have Amari Cooper still. I have Michael Gallup, who is untradeable. He's basically droppable. I don't know what to do with Amari Cooper. I don't know how to get off a trade for him, personally. It's just, what do you do with a guy that is on a team that is legitimately a dumpster fire? Everybody can see the dumpster fire in Arlington. I see it right now outside of my window. It's engulfed in flames. It's the smoke that you see when products are burning that should not be burning. If you smell it, it's going to cause you to pass out or something. It's horrible what's happening in Dallas. That team was an offensive gold mine for 5 solid weeks of football, and it just has plummeted to Jets level of mediocrity. Actually, the Jets aren't mediocre, so it's plummeted to Jets level of bad offense. I am not having fun with that sort of lifestyle, and I don't know who can be. But we're going to take a break, and we're going to finish out the podcast soon, right afterwards. GSMC, we'll be right back.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Let me ask you, have you been also thinking about getting off the Dallas Cowboys offensive talent? I have been too. How are we going to achieve this? Who knows, man? For one thing, it's just not that easy. Everybody sees what goes on in Dallas. We all see it. People have eyes. People listen to talk media. People listen to podcasts. We know Dallas is bad. How bad can they get, I guess, is the real question. Maybe they bounce back. Maybe they rebound. And what you would end up be doing is selling yourself short because you didn't sell them at their highest possible potential before the badness came in. If there was a time to sell, it was definitely legitimately after the Dak injury because you're not getting anything worth the value. Then you probably should just keep him, right? Amari Cooper, for all intents and purposes, still gets a lot of volume, right? For a guy that does not, like, maybe it's garbage time, but it's just not. What else can you do? He managed up to get 80 yards versus Washington. He caught 7 for 7. That's solid usage rate. He went 7 for 79 and 1 against Arizona. If that's the baseline for Amari Cooper, you might as well keep him, because what else are you going to get for him? It's not like he gives you upside. This is the best scenario that Amari Cooper is going to give somebody, and it's not going to be via trade. I don't know if, CeeDee Lamb has that bad of a game again. It's just 0.1 points. I just have a hard time believing that that's what CeeDee Lamb is going to become. Of course, we understand the Michael Gallup experience has been a painful one since the beginning of this year. We didn't know where he was going to be in the lineup, but as of right now, he's basically non-playable in fantasy football, and it would be a miracle. You would probably just have to tag him in just to make a trade evenly traded, so no one has to drop anybody, just to keep Michael Gallup, to give him away. Because right now he's droppable, and that's just a factor in the matter of the whole thing. Michael Gallup was on a team at a time where the offensive potential was through the roof, and for the most part, they did their job. Like they were projected to be an offensive boom place, and offensive boom it was. But recently, Zeke has struggled. Zeke with, he hasn't reached his average per year in 2 straight weeks, 12 in week 6, 6 in week 7. That is unacceptable, right? You could still probably trade off of Zeke if you want to. There's just no way Zeke continues this. But should you? What are you going to get in return? Right? If you're not going to get somebody that you really believe in that can be better than what Zeke is outputting, because I don't think this is who Zeke is as a player. I don't think anybody believes this is who Zeke is as a player, right? But it's just a little food for thought. How can you, what do you do in this sort of situation? I think the best thing for you to do is probably sit on it, because if you try to trade it, you're going to lose. And it's not because you tried to make a trade happen. You're going to lose primarily because there's nothing of value that you can legitimately get unless you package somebody else. There's nobody sitting here waiting for the Amari Cooper trade. And if they are looking for Amari Cooper, they're going to grime you. They're going to give you something garbage, and they're just going to wait for Amari Cooper to get better, because Dallas is going to plateau at some point. I think it was this week. This is probably the worst Dallas is ever going to look for the remainder of the season. And it will get better. And that's just the bottom line. It will get better, and it'll be incremental weeks to weeks, but Dallas's offense will get better. It just will not be what we had beforehand. Their value has tanked, and you just have to live with that sort of stuff. That's just kind of the bottom line. And after that point, you just move on, right? That's just kind of the ins and outs of that. You just kind of have to chalk that one up to the game and say, congratulations, fantasy gods, you got me again. And that's just kind of where you are in this whole deal. And you got to move forward. Outside of that, though, let's talk about this Pittsburgh deal. I remember last week we talked about a trade that netted somebody Chase Claypool, and Chase Claypool did not do anything. He had 1 catch for -2 yards. Not great, right? And then we saw Deontay Johnson get all the volume. And to be honest, the Deontay Johnson thing, if you look at the statistics, look at the volume when he was healthy and did play, this is what was happening. And if you also look, Ben Roethlisberger has not been all that great. Big Ben has not been all that great. And that comes with a price. Fantasy-wise, Big Ben isn't going to lose you games, right? I'm not going to sit here and say Big Ben is Daniel Jones or anything like that. But what is happening there is that he is a guy who's on a team that won 8 games with 2 quarterbacks who will never see the field again unless something drastic happens, right? Don't believe Duck Hodges. I don't believe in the other guy. I can't even remember his name off the top of my head. Is going to, I don't think they'll see the field again at the quarterback position in the starting lineup. That's just the end all be all of that discussion. Big Ben is a humongous upgrade from that. But it does not mean Big Ben has been playing in particularly well in the passing game, in fantasy. He's just not somebody who I would be like, dang, I'm going up against Big Ben this week. You're not scared of that. Tua Tagovailoa plays next week, and he goes up against the LA Rams. He's going to get the Aaron Donald experience. Hopefully they're going to be prepared for that. I think it's going to be a lot of quick passes for Tua to get him in rhythm. It might take some deep shots if it works out. Myles Gaskin is going to be heavily involved in the running game, and I know everybody who owns Gaskin is very happy to see that, Le'Veon is not on the Miami Dolphins, because everybody, I think the Chiefs thing is a bit interesting on how they are going to potentially use him. But in Miami, it was like if he goes to Miami, then the volume could just be anywhere and anywhere. And you just don't know where that was going to take you. So for all intents and purposes, that was that's a great non-addition for all the fantasy owners of the Miami Dolphins. Hopefully, let's see if Preston Williams can get involved. I don't know what the chemistry is going to be like. I think everybody's going to be watching this game for multiple reasons. I held on to Preston Williams for a while just because I like him as a player. And sometimes he has big, deep ball potential, and he could be a guy that you can throw in your flex spot when needed be. And considering my Michael Thomas situation, I really am not in a place to where I can just start putting receivers in trade talks or putting a lot of receivers in I don't need you anymore territory, like, the Toy Story. I don't want to play with you anymore. You throw up in the toy box. Can't throw Preston Williams in the toy box. Toy speech. All right. In the toy box. Can't throw him in there. Not just yet. Same thing with Shenault, right? Laviscus has been fun. He was doing some things, but right now the Jaguars offense, Jaguars as a team, is not great. They kind of threw us off for a little bit in the first few weeks. We thought they were frisky. We thought they were better. They're better than what we anticipated, but they're still pretty bad. And I think that's just the bottom line. We got to remember, some people are still pretty bad, and that is just that's the baseline. And I've been living by this motto for the past few weeks as it regards to the NFL season, and that is when somebody shows you who they are, please believe them. So when the Saints show you that their defense in secondary is just confused all the time, and they just give up bad plays, deep balls, even though their run defense is spectacular, even though on paper their team should be way better defensively than what it is, believe them when they show you that they're not that great. Right? Believe Tampa Bay when their defense is flying around and they're fast, physical, they're nasty. And you see a guy like Josh Jacobs, who you believe in Josh Jacobs as a talent, but he just will overwhelm people. I'm sorry, not Josh Jacobs, but that defense overwhelms people. We saw it last week against Green Bay. When they are on, they can overwhelm you. They overwhelmed Aaron Rodgers. Of course, they're going to overwhelm Derek Carr. Right? Even if Derek Carr and the Raiders have essentially looked about as good as they did last year, they win tough games. Sometimes they win. They don't win the games they're supposed to. They're a frisky team. They're trying to figure themselves out. This is like, year 3 in the John Gruden 10-year contract experience. So, it's moving along. Believe people when they show you who they are. Dallas, believe that Dallas is this bad, but it will be better for the offense at some point. It can't get much worse. Remember this. It cannot get much worse. Believe them when they show you who they are. DeAndre Swift and the Detroit Lions. He's been having himself a game here or there. He's been doing some things. And I almost traded for him before I got Ronald Jones. He had 9 rushers for 27 yards and 1 reception. Receiving, he had 4 for 21 yards. 4 receptions for 21 yards. And last week he had 27 points where he had 14 touches for 116 and 2 rushing touchdowns. And he had 3 receptions for 7 yards apiece. He's been kind of in and out of the receiving game, but it helps that when they're down, they don't have to take him out of the game. Unlike Adrian Peterson, who does not necessarily help them in the passing game whatsoever. And at this point, he's more of a supplementary back. It looks like this is DeAndre Swift's backfield from now on. And at this point, this is what people are hoping for Cam Akers, but it's not happening right now. Probably due to this rib injury that they're probably not speaking on as how serious it probably is. But because Darrell Henderson is as serviceable as he can be for this team, I can only assume that they're just going to ride it out. And that's just kind of where they are as a team. I don't think they need to do anything too crazy. And that's kind of what they feel as a Rams unit. They just need to win the game. And, Sean McVay is a guy who he's a player's coach, but he also is serious. He wants stuff executed the way he wants. And he wants guys to be able to follow his instructions. I feel he is a guy that, is very, I feel like he's very personal. He's like the first guy that everybody kind of fell in love with as a coaching hire, and because he brought immediate results, essentially. And then a year later, things kind of went south, and the offensive line was in shambles. Everyone forgot. Now he's coaching for real. I don't think he wasn't coaching for real, but now he's coaching for real. And he's showing that he's a head coach that's here to stay, right? And I think that's going to happen with Cliff Kingsbury, and I think it's already happened with Kyle Shanahan, where these guys are coaches for real. And they're going to be coaching for a long time. So be prepared, because offenses are going to continue to evolve and get really strong. All that in the 9 yards, man. It's going to be an experience to watch. But real quick, coaching fires. Mike McCarthy is on the number 1 spot of the list, man. Mike McCarthy, I don't know what he brings, man. The locker room doesn't know what's going on. They feel ill prepared. Like when something like that comes out in media where they say they do not feel prepared to play games on Sundays, and when you look at them play, it does reflect well that they do not look prepared to play games. That is, in fact, a troubling sign. I don't know what you do with Kellen Moore or Mike McCarthy. I don't know if the defensive coordinator's job is any better, safe. There was a funny report that he had Tabasco in his eye, the defensive coordinator for Dallas Cowboys, and thus he could not do a press conference for a little while. It was delayed. That's funny. But yeah, man, Dallas is in a bind, and those who own their players are in one too. But for that GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you guys for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share the podcast, and follow us on social media, man. I'll be back on Friday to talk about just some games coming up and what all that's going to entail. GSMC, I'll see you soon.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.GSMC.com. GSMCpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.